So here we are. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Steven Anderson, and thank you for stopping by to hang out with me for my first Innovations and Conversations series, sponsored by Promethean and ClassFlow. And I'm really excited to get into these conversations that I'm going to have with the leading thought leaders and doers and thinkers in the world of education. And I couldn't be more happier to have my guest today, Amanda Dykes, who is not only a wonderful educator, but a really great friend of mine. And we'll talk to her in just a second, but I just want to remind everybody that you can check out my Google Plus page, that's plus Steven Anderson, to see more of the events. And you can also check out prometheanworld.com/webinars, and you can see all of our upcoming events that we'll have. Our next guest is Erin Klein, coming up in a couple weeks, and we'll be talking to her then. Today, while we talk to Amanda, don't forget you can tweet out. We want you to share. We want you to share the great things that are happening during our conversation. We just want you to use the hashtag EdLounge today. So, Amanda, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm excited to be here.
So let's jump right into it. So we've got a couple questions. We're just going to have kind of cool, casual conversation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what makes you amazing?
What makes me, well, we don't have time for that. I'm Amanda Dykes. I'm a mom. I like to bake. I like kids, and I am a middle school teacher. I teach technology and STEM. For years, I taught sixth grade science, so this is kind of a new adventure for me. I've taught most of the elementary school grades, so I've done all that kind of stuff.
So we'll talk about the STEM class in a minute, because that's kind of one of the main reasons why I think it's important that we talk to you. But one thing I'm going to ask everybody who comes on with me is, why did they become an educator? So what was it in your life that made you become an educator?
My college messed up my schedule. I was pre-law, and I was pre-law, and I was going to get a teaching certificate. Because I thought, well, maybe I want to be a cheerleading coach, like between law school and taking my exams and stuff. So that was just kind of one of the options. And so I put on there that I just wanted a teaching certificate, and I went to get my schedule changed, and they were kind of like, well, okay, that's fine. We understand it might be a little difficult for you. We're one of the top education schools in the country at the time, and so it's good that you get out now before it gets too hard. And I was like, challenge accepted. But the school put me in clinicals the first, I think it was second semester of my freshman year, and I already, I was a tutor in high school, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, working with kids and explaining stuff to them. So once I got in clinicals my freshman year, I kind of got hooked, and I loved it. And so it was kind of, I knew it was the right thing for me, even though it was a big mistake.
Now, since the time that I've known you, which has been 5-6 years now, you were a science teacher, and you did some really cool things with science. And then last year, you taught a class specifically on STEM. And now this year, we were just talking before we went on about how you're teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade specifically in STEM. So tell us, what does that class do? What are the kids going to be doing? What does that mean? And then why is it important that the kids, especially middle school, why is it important that they do STEM?
Well, let's see. Last year I taught a technology class, and we put some STEM elements into it. So I guess it kind of wasn't as much of a STEM class as I wanted it to be. Towards the end of the year, we really started putting the elements in it, and I really started enjoying it. And so this year, we're going to do it for the 7th and 8th grade, and we're going to take kind of where we started last year in 6th grade, and especially with my 7th grade class, and we're going to start, expanding on that. Our high school just got a huge grant for a STEM class, and so it's kind of like we're kind of getting them prepared, and that's kind of my goal. I've been sitting here trying to write the curriculum, and I've been writing my syllabus all day because I keep going, no, maybe I don't want to teach that. Maybe I want to put this in there. So, really what it comes down to is I really want to make sure that we embrace those design elements, and we definitely pull in the math and science part beyond paper and pencil. I really want it to be, a lot of the hands-on. And it's kind of funny because I've talked all summer to school districts and at conferences about how to put STEM in a normal classroom, how to put STEM in an English classroom, and here I am separating STEM from everything else. So I kind of feel like I'm doing it wrong. But when you're asked to do something and you have a job, you do it. But really, I think it'll be good because I think we're going to really get really deep down, talk about things like alternative energy. I have kind of a plan, a project that we're kind of working on that we're going to collaborate with some people in different countries, in different continents, So, and a huge one. I think it's going to be, I don't know. I don't want to put it out there because I'm afraid like something's going to happen. It's going to fall through. But we're really going to reach out, and so we're going to use that alternative energy and that solar power to get education to kids who are in places that don't have it. And so I've got connections there, and so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of those whole design, doing the whole prototyping. And I think prototyping is going to be a huge part of it this year. Last year I saw the kids really take off with that, and a lot of those kids I have again this year. So that's going to be a really big goal, coming up with asking that question of how can we make this better? What's the problem? How are we going to solve it?
Now you said you're designing your own curriculum, and I mean that seems like that's any teacher would love. That's a dream to be able to design your own curriculum. What's that been like for you?
You say it's a dream, but
because I ask you because I know what you're gonna say.
Sometimes I really want somebody just to hand me a book and say, "This is what you're teaching." Last year was a struggle. I would say that it would probably be my hardest year, and it was because I found out that I was going to teach the class 2 weeks before school started, so I had 2 weeks to prepare a curriculum. I'm the only person in the district teaching anything like this in middle school. There's the elementary school, specials where they go play on the computer, but there was nobody. I don't have, luckily I have, social media to kind of connect with people because I was all alone. And it's still that way. It's hard because you're going to fail. And that's kind of what this class is about, is teaching kids, prototyping and how to fail and how to go back and say, okay, this didn't work, I'm going to do this. So I had to live it. Like, I lived project-based learning in my own life. So I know how it feels, kids. And I know what failed. And that's hard because, there are parents who are like, well, this didn't work. What are you going to do to fix it? I felt like I was kind of under the microscope the whole time. But, like, I really cannot even explain how much I grew as an educator, how much I learned last year. Now that I'm looking back on it, because at the time I was like, I'm such a failure, I hate this job, and now I'm looking back on it, I can see my successes, and I can see, okay, you know what, I saw that this didn't work, and this is what I did. And, this summer I've spent a lot of time with teachers saying, you know what, when you're doing project-based learning, when you're doing technology, when you're doing STEM, this doesn't work. And this is why, and this is what I did to solve it. And so it's been a huge learning experience for me. I've kind of sat down and tracked everything I did this year, and so it was kind of good to go back and say, okay, this is where I was fall to a pit of despair, and here's how I got out of it. So
that reflective piece, and you touched on this, is so important. Is that reflective piece of being able to go back. So you just had to design it in your first year, and then being able to really sit down and think about over the summer, okay, this is what didn't work, and here's how I'm going to make it better. And I ask you the question about designing your own curriculum, fully knowing that it's while we all say, yeah, I would love to be able to just throw everything out the window and just design the way that I want to. When you actually have to do that, when you're sitting at scratch and you're saying, okay, you have to teach STEM. Okay.
Do I have
very little guidance, right? It's very little guidance, and so you have to rely on the resources that you have at hand, and fortunately, because you're connected, that you've got this wide array of people, and then the project that you're doing too. It sounds really interesting. I think that a lot of people will be interested to hear how that goes with looking at alternative energy sources in places where that's desperately needed. And so not only do you have the freedom to create your own kind of way of doing things, but now your kids can really take on those projects that show a lot of meaning. And that's one thing I love to talk about is authenticity and learning. And I think something like a STEM class, well, we say jokingly, oh, it shouldn't be, it should be integrated into everything we do, but I think there's some benefit to it, to being isolated like it is, that kids can really deeply explore those concepts. And I think what you've got going on has the potential to be something really incredible for those kids. So
Yeah.
we see. Yeah, so you're in your classroom, and we were just talking a little while ago about how your kids come back tomorrow. So at this time you'll have finished your first day, and so it's you posted I think it was a video yesterday on Facebook. I saw a video of your classroom. You did kind of that a 365 view of your classroom, and so you've got your kids in groups, and so. A traditional teacher might tell you, no, don't put them in groups on the first day. They need to be in rows because you need to remember their names and you need to make sure you show them who's boss. And so it's clear that collaboration is important to you. And so why is it? Why are you putting them in groups on the first day? And why is it that collaboration is so important, especially in STEM?
Because, humans learn from each other. And it's hard for me because I am a social learner. I'm one of those people, I want to be in groups. When I was in school, I wanted to be in groups. I went to a project-based learning college, and it was great because I was always in groups, and I was always, working, and it's, my second grade teacher hated anybody that wanted to collaborate with anything, so that was a struggle in elementary school because I wanted to talk to people and find out what they were learning and find out, all this stuff that was going on beyond what was on my worksheet or on my paper. And so as a teacher, I know that is a, I don't know. I just know that that's an important part of a human. That's just that's how people learn. And it's hard. And as a middle school teacher, middle schoolers do really bad in groups. And I can see why somebody would say put them in rows. And I've done that. I've had my classroom in rows, especially when I did science. And the first few weeks, when we came in and talked about procedures. But with this classroom, one of the big things is that collaboration is key because you're going to have to go and you're going to have, when we're prototyping, we're going to have other people's opinions. We're going to have empathy and find out what people want and what people like about this, what they don't like, put ourselves in each other's shoes. And so you can't do that without groups. My big rule in here is if we are collaborating, we are working in groups, and we are discussing things, everybody's hands are busy. Because if not, one person's doing all the work and everybody else is just kind of sitting back. And so we always say our hands are busy. If we're in the computer lab, I have a computer lab across the hall that I have access to all day. And so if we're in the computer lab, the person that was on the computer yesterday cannot have the computer tomorrow. So we talk about that. We talk about when they have a reflection piece on every project we do. I do contracts with checklists and due dates and deadlines. And on there, if they don't make their deadline, they have to tell me why. And it says on there in bold letters, do not blame your group members, because mom's mad, mom, why did you make that? Well, it was her fault, and so so you have to go in and establish those guidelines at the beginning, because if you don't do it at the beginning and you wait to the end, you have to fight an uphill battle. So yeah, to me, I want to go ahead and start with the year, them knowing that we're going to work together. We're a group. We're going to use each other's brains. We had this conversation last week on Twitter that I always say that Twitter is like sitting next to the smartest kids in class, and it's because you have people to bounce ideas off of, and people didn't like that comment because who's the smart kid? Well, the smart kid's who knows the answer. And so, you might have a part of the answer. I might have part of the answer. We put that together. The person next to us is really excited because now we got all of it. So, and I can understand why you wouldn't want them in groups sometimes. And there are times when they're not in groups, and there are times that they work by themselves. But they do better when they are working with each other. And like I said, it's hard for middle school kids because there's a lot of drama there. And I always when they're in a group, I always make the project so much easier because if not, because you have to put the human aspect in it. You got to deal with another person. That's always hard.
And I think what you said, I think something you said there was pretty profound. Is we had that conversation where I was at a conference and someone tweeted out somebody had a presentation, and in there they had a quote that you said that being in social media is like being next to the smart kid in class, and someone took offense to, well, what does that mean, sitting next to the smart kid? Well, and I think that everybody is smart, and we both of us have said this, is that everybody is smart in their own way, that everybody has something to offer, and so while smart isn't a measure necessarily of intelligence, I think what you said is the smart person is the person who has the answer, and not everybody has the whole answer. Is that we have to learn to work together to put those pieces of the puzzle together, and just like with what you're going to try to do in your classroom with STEM, and I mean, rarely will anybody who works in any one of those jobs will tell you that they work in isolation or that they do things by themselves, that they're consulting with teams, they're reading, they're doing things with other people, and so why not do that in class? Why not give Right, well, exactly. Why not give them those opportunities to have feedback? Why not give them those opportunities to learn from each other? So it's hugely important. So we touched a little bit on social media. You're a pretty prolific social media user. You know, you've got I don't know, like 1 billion tweets that you've sent out or something like that, and you know, nearly 10,000 followers. You know, this huge social media presence. People, you know, want you to come in and talk to them about using social media. You know, so what are some of the benefits? So we'll start with the benefits. What are some of the great things that you've been able to do because of social media?
You know, it's kind of like I was saying. You have that whole collaboration. You have that whole support system. I was talking to somebody the other day about back when Twitter started. You know, it was a very small group of us that were on there, and you know, I could put out anything, and somebody was always going to answer. You know, there was never a tweet that didn't have a reply, and we built those groups, and those are, you know, my closest friends now. I mean, like you said, we met 5 years ago, and there's people I meet now that, you know, as time goes on, but it's not. I don't know. You just have that group that you always, you know, are close to, and so I feel like there's that support system with me. You know, we're humans. We want to interact. We want to be social, and we learn that way. I don't know. I just don't see why people don't understand that we learn that way. I mean, we learn from each other. You tell me one thing, I'm listening, obviously, and I'm going to give you feedback, and we're going to build that on back and forth on from each other. And so that, I mean, that's to me a huge part of it. The reflection piece of it, like, you know, if I'm reflecting in a blog, you know, my blog posts are always about what I did that sucked, and you know, other people are going to learn from that, and I learn from other people's blogs. It's a really quick way to do it. It's something that's always there. You know, if people are like me and I have an off period, 7th period, and I'm the only teacher in the whole school that's off that period, I don't have that support system in my building. And so I know that I have that outside of my building. And, you know, we're in our building from 8 to 3, and then we've got kids and we've got to go here and there, but while I'm sitting there at gymnastics, my brain's going over what I can do, and I know I can reach out to you guys. I can reach out to you on Voxter. I can reach out to you, you know, on Facebook or Twitter, and I can have those, you know, connections.
So, and I, you know, I 100,000% agree that it's not when people see social media, it's kind of this tainted view of what they see that celebrities are doing, or that, you know, what they see happening in that realm with social media, and that's not at all what happens with educators and the amount of learning that takes place. I mean, just look yesterday. There was a big ed camp in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia yesterday, ed camp leader. I wish I really wanted to go. I couldn't go, but I was able to sit on the beach and watch tweets go by and look at all the resources that were being posted and watch the conversation. I mean, that's not stuff that you know, 10 years ago when I got into teaching, or, you know, when a lot of us got into teaching, or whenever, that wasn't even possible. We couldn't even do anything like that. That there's a tremendous amount of learning that takes place through social media, and it's just a matter of getting over that hump of believing that it is something that's a viable part of your professional learning. I think that
it's personalized. You can sit on the beach and read tweets, okay? And then, you know, if you didn't like tweets, then you can go read the blog post that people wrote about it. I mean, that's the thing, is it's personalized. It's whatever you want it to be. And I think people forget about that. We are taking, you know, we tell our kids all the time, you know, oh, we got to personalize for these kids, and we got to make it sure that we're meeting their passions and we're, you know, speaking their language, but we don't think about that for ourselves. And so that's where social media becomes very, you know, important. And yeah, there is that whole drawback, and there's that whole thing of, oh, it's bad, oh, it's bad. You know, I remember 4 years ago when I did a thing on Twitter at our state conference, and this principal was in there, and she turned around and told my principal that I was talking about when I got stranded in St. Louis that time. I was coming back from EduCon, and I was stuck for 4 days in a blizzard. And I was talking about how I knew people on social media, and I had somebody, by the time I got my luggage, I had a hotel, and, because I knew people that were there.
Right.
And so, of course, they got turned around, and, your teacher is telling people to go meet people on the internet and go meet them at hotels. And I was like, no, that's not what I did. And I think the view's changing. I think it's starting to catch on. I think people are finally starting to see, hey, look, this is a positive thing, and I think districts are finally picking that up on it.
So I think it's only fair to balance against the good. And in fact, you and I just recently had a conversation about what's kind of what we're seeing, and it's not to turn people off. And there is wonderful, great content out there, but we're seeing something here that's happening lately that we have to try and figure out why is it happening or what's going on with it. So do you want to talk about, kind of what we've been seeing that's been happening with social media lately?
Sure. I think we're talking. I think I know what you're talking about. One of the things is the whole. We're always going to have to argue our point, and our whole. We're not letting people voice our opinions, and I think that's one thing we forget. Social media is a social area. You're not going to sit there at lunch with other teachers, and every time that they say something that you don't agree with, you're not going to blast them, going, "Where's your? What do you have to back that up? What do you mean by that exactly?" And I'm seeing that a lot, and I really think it's because a lot of the people who are now on social media started with chats, and chats are that's what they're for. I mean, they're for that bouncing ideas. It's for saying, oh, I can do this. I can, I like this. Oh, pushing those boundaries. But I don't think everything we put out there has to be pushed. I don't think everything somebody says has got to be pushed. My opinion that, next to the smart kids. That's just my opinion. That was just me saying a quote 4 years ago. I mean, I think I wrote that blog post 4 years ago. And people forget that you're talking to another human being, and sometimes we just hide behind that mask of social media. And I think that's a lot of times why I tell people, put your face on that profile picture, because if it's your face, it's you saying that, and I think a lot of times when people hide behind cartoons or things like that, they're the ones that you got to kind of watch out for sometimes. So, because it's kind of you kind of have that,
Well, and Twitter may not be the most appropriate place, right, to have that. There's and being somebody who founded a pretty popular hashtag and chat, there's an opportunity and there's a place to have those conversations. Yeah, just a little small one. There's an opportunity and a place to have those conversations, but to really do the deep reflective. I don't think there's anybody who is heavily invested in Twitter as you or I or many of us would say that Twitter is the most appropriate place to do that pushback. Our blogs and our long forms are where you can really kind of hone in on those ideas, and that, like you said, not everything has to be argued, not everything has to be pushed. There's a time and a place for all that to happen. And I don't think Twitter is really the means for that to happen. Certainly there is an opportunity for us to push each other's thinking through chats and through small conversations, but if we're going to go deep and we're going to go, if we're really going to understand each other, I think the blogging is a much better place for that.
I completely agree. And I think that's what blogs are for. I mean, that's, to me, that's kind of where that is. Yeah, but I see it as like almost an epidemic. Like, like lately, I'll put out like an opinion about just something random, and I get all this pushback, and I'm just like, okay, good. It wasn't meant to anything. It was just me saying this. I didn't really need an argument, and and I think that, and I think it's because, and I really do. I think it's the whole chat thing. I think that's that's where we taught people how to use Twitter, to have that pushback, and that's great. I think it's a fantastic thing, and I think that they don't know how to turn it off. And so I think that we got to realize when we're just talking and conversing on Twitter, that's a place for us to just build those relationships. That's a place for us to share information, not a huge place to push back.
Definitely.
That's just my...
Yeah, no, I think I definitely agree. I think there's huge benefits to being able to find the resources and to find the connections and to find those people that do push your thinking, but I think there are different venues for that allow us to push our thinkings better. So we're short on time, but I have to, because I've made a big deal out of this, that I was a middle school teacher. You are a middle school teacher. I really think that, and I will argue with anybody all day long, that the grades 6, 7, and 8 are the best years to teach. Elementary teachers, love them. They're awesome, amazing. High school teachers, they're awesome. They're amazing at what they do. But middle school, those are the years where kids fundamentally change who they are, and we get to guide them through that transition. So what is it that makes middle school great to you?
You pretty much just summed it up. I mean, if you think about it, I don't think I've ever met anybody that says, and you ask them, tell me about your middle school years, and they said it was great, loved it. You know, it's not. I mean, all of my insecurities come back from middle school. You know, like this one kid made this one comment one day about me having a big nose, and I can't look in the mirror without looking at my nose. You know, and so really and truly, all of our insecurities, all of our, you know, things like that, all come out of middle school, and it's just because, I mean, and it's hard, and we have teachers come in and they either teach middle school forever or they teach middle school for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and it's because they are elementary school, they're babies. High school, they're, you know, you can sit down,
they're grown. They think they're grown.
Yeah, but you can get around with them. You know, like, you know, they're just kind of. But we're in the middle here, and I really feel like the education system in America really gives them the shaft. There is no place for middle school. There's no research on it. And I read somewhere that the two people that were the main researchers on middle school education had differing opinions. And so, but it's hard. I mean, you come in the first day of 6th grade, you could ask these kids, how many planets are there? And they're going to sit there and go, 12. You know, and nobody knows, and people don't really, they're not trained to understand why. They don't understand that there's part of their brain that actually cuts off when they get to middle school. And, you know, and so, no, there's not a lot of research, and it makes me really sad because they're the ones that are the most lost. Of all the kids you have, they're the most lost.
Developmentally, I mean, they go through a huge transition, especially from 11 to 14. I mean, they go through this huge developmental transition, and it just so happens those are the years where they're in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and so you're trying to teach them all these great concepts while also basically trying to turn them in from young children into young adults. And it's just, for me, it was an incredible transition to watch these kids who once they realized that they were changing, they didn't like it, and they tried to fight it. And because some of them wanted to stay young, or they wanted to stay the way that they were, they didn't want to grow up. And to be able to guide kids in that way, you know, high school is great. You know, you're preparing kids to go off to college or to go off to career, and that's great. You know, it's a different world. Elementary school, it's there, like you said. I still call them babies. You know, 5th graders they're still babies. My daughter is going to be a kindergartner. She's still a baby. You know, and it's those middle school years that I think are the most crucial. And you know, it's like you said. It's like you said. You know, it's when somebody asks you, what do you do? Oh, I'm a middle school teacher. They're like, oh, really?
Oh,
that's gotta be terrible. No, it's really awesome. They're the best years to teach.
They're fun. They are a lot of fun. They smell bad, but they're
I will agree. They sometimes do not smell the prettiest.
You have different levels of stank. So my kids call it stank. But you know, there's nothing worse than taco salad day. But yeah, there's just so much going on. And I always say the bravest people on the earth are 8th grade girls 2nd semester, because that's the time that they actually decide who their friends are. That's the time that they say, you know what, I've always been this person's friend because I've always been this person's friend. And for some reason, when they hit that time, because I was a cheerleading coach, and so this was like basketball season. I hated basketball season because that was the time that all the 8th grade girls decided they don't have to be friends anymore. And they don't have to be friends just because they've always been friends. And they don't have to be friends. And they start picking people that are like them. And they pick people that have the same belief system as them. And it's a big deal. And I always think those are the bravest kids because they're now having to step out. That popular girl doesn't make the 8th grade homecoming court like she did in 6th and 7th grade. And it's a big deal because they're finally learning how to be themselves and how to really take a stand. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it really is incredible years. All right, so one last question before we end up. So, you know, we've all gotten great pieces of advice, and so one thing I'm going to ask everybody is, what's the best piece of advice you ever got as a teacher?
The one that I always keep forgetting, and that's don't take it personally. You know, don't take it personally, and don't sweat the small stuff. You know, look at the big picture. The personal thing is like a parent writes you this email, they're like, I hate you, you're an idiot, you're the worst thing that's ever happened to my kid. You take that personally, and you forget that whole point that they're a mom and that's their baby. And I forget that. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, she wrote me this email, let's just quit. But and I do. I'm really bad about taking it personally. And I remember my first year of teaching, I had a principal, she sat me down and she said, please stop taking it personally. And, that's my biggest hang up as a teacher. That's my worst thing of doing. But that was the best advice, and I have to keep reminding myself that every day. Don't sweat those little small things. Look at the big picture. Look at your kids. Keep them in mind. So.
Very true. So this has been amazing. This has been so much fun. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. You're a wonderful friend, and I appreciate you coming on and quite literally hanging out with us today. So thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. I was so excited to be here.
And thanks for everybody for watching. Don't forget, you'll be able to check out the archive. We'll get this archive posted, and we'll let everybody know where that is. And you can follow Amanda at Amanda C. Dykes. You can follow me at Web20 Classroom. The next installment of our Innovations and Conversations with Stephen Anderson is going to be featuring Aaron Klein, and that's going to be Tuesday, August the 19th at 7 o'clock Eastern. So you can go to prometheanworld.com/webinars, and you can register for that for free. So for Amanda, I'm Stephen Anderson. This has been Innovations and Conversations with Stephen Anderson, sponsored by Promethean and ClassFlow. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.